911, what's your emergency?
There's a man on the floor. He's not moving. I think the snake, it's still wrapped around him.
Is he breathing? Can you see any movement at all?
No, it's around his neck. Oh God, I think it killed him. His python killed him.
The emergency lights pierced through the quiet suburban street as first responders rushed toward a modest home lined with exotic animal warning signs. Inside, beneath the glow of heat lamps and stacked glass terrariums, lay the lifeless body of Mark Fisher, a seasoned reptile enthusiast with over a decade of experience handling snakes. His prized Burmese python, an 8-foot-long serpent named Tiny, had been with him since it was no thicker than a shoelace. But sometime that morning, something changed. What Mark once called affection became compression. You're watching Animal Shock Stories. If this tragic case leaves you stunned or searching for answers, subscribe for more true cautionary tales and share your thoughts below. Could this horror have been prevented, or was it always inevitable? From the moment Tiny slid out of its egg, Mark Fisher was convinced their bond was different. He called the hatchling his little guy, cradling it in his palms like a fragile treasure. While most handlers used hooks or gloves, Mark insisted on bare hands and soft words. He documented everything: feeding sessions, growth milestones, even molting cycles, as if he were raising a child. As Tiny grew from a pencil-thin infant to a thick, muscled predator over 8 feet long, Mark's devotion only deepened. On social media, he shared photo after photo of the massive Burmese python draped across his shoulders, coiled loosely around his waist, or resting on his chest while he lounged on the couch. Captions often read like love letters: "Trust takes time. He trusts me." Friends remember how Mark would sit cross-legged by Tiny's enclosure, speaking to the snake in a low, affectionate voice. He even joked that Tiny liked his voice better than anyone else's. On cold nights, he claimed the python would press its body closer to the glass, sensing his presence. Some found it endearing. Others found it troubling. "He slept in the same room," one friend recalled. "He treated that thing like a dog that just didn't bark." But reptiles don't bark and they don't bond. Experts have long warned against attributing human emotions to cold-blooded animals, but Mark dismissed those cautions with a wave of his hand. "Tiny knows me," he said once during a live stream. "He's got no reason to bite the hand that feeds him. I raised him." He believed their history meant something more, something sacred. That because he never provoked fear or pain, the snake had no reason to react violently. It was a belief steeped not in science, but in sentiment. Neighbors, too, had concerns. One recalled seeing Tiny's full body stretched out across the front window, basking in sunlight, and thinking it looked more like a weapon than a pet. Another remembered a day when Mark walked out to get the mail with the snake wrapped lazily around his neck like a living scarf. "What if it tightened?" she asked him once. He only laughed. "He's just chillin'. He's my buddy." But snakes don't do buddy. They respond to heat, scent, and motion. They measure prey by body mass, not by friendship. And while Mark may have imagined affection, Tiny's calm demeanor was not love, it was latency. A predator resting until instinct flickered back on. That belief in a bond, that absolute certainty that Tiny would never hurt him, became Mark's blind spot. He treated years of peaceful coexistence as proof of permanence. He mistook tolerance for trust, and when the time came when the python's instincts were triggered, there was no warning growl, no flicker of betrayal in its eyes. Just pressure. Silent, decisive pressure. The tragic irony is that the very comfort Mark found in Tiny's presence, the stillness, the silence, the seeming gentleness, wasn't connection. It was restraint. And restraint, unlike trust, doesn't last forever. Mark Fisher wasn't oblivious, he just didn't want to hear it. Over the years, a growing chorus of friends, professionals, and even total strangers tried to warn him that what he saw as a bond was more likely a ticking clock. On reptile forums, when he posted photos of himself handling Tiny without tools, replies came fast and sharp. "That snake is a muscle with teeth," one commenter wrote. You're one bad reflex away from blacking out. A local reptile veterinarian who once treated Tiny for a minor respiratory infection gently raised concerns during a checkup. She's getting large, the vet said. You really shouldn't be handling her alone anymore, especially around the neck. Mark smiled, nodded, and never brought her back again. His closest friends remember similar conversations. One recalled a particularly disturbing moment when Tiny had coiled herself tightly around Mark's leg and refused to release for several long minutes. She was just playing, Mark had insisted, even as his face turned red and his hands trembled. She does that sometimes. But pythons don't play. When they wrap, they measure. And when they tighten, it's rarely by mistake. Experts call it constriction rehearsal, a chilling term for a chilling truth. Snakes may engage in brief, seemingly benign coils to assess strength and reaction. Worse still is the so-called feeding response, a behavior well documented by herpetologists. In captivity, snakes often associate opening an enclosure or sudden movement with feeding time. The transition from calm to strike can be instantaneous, no warning hiss, no change in posture, just teeth and coils. Burmese pythons, in particular, are known for their strength and unpredictability when startled, and Mark, despite his years of experience, had no protective protocols in place, no second person nearby, no tools within reach, no breakaway hook. You're trusting a reflex machine not to reflex, said Dr. Andrea Linwood, a reptile behaviorist interviewed after the incident. It doesn't matter how long you've raised it. If instinct fires, you lose. Her voice became part of the post-mortem chorus voices that had tried to reach him before and were now speaking into the void he left behind. One online acquaintance had even compiled a list of near-miss incidents involving large constrictors in private homes and sent it to Mark after seeing a particularly risky photo. Mark's reply was dismissive. I've got it under control. She knows me. But control was an illusion. Herpetological safety guidelines are explicit. Any snake over 6 feet should never be handled alone. And Tiny was well past 8. Mark believed himself to be an exception, an expert, a whisperer, someone who could rewrite instinct through kindness. But instincts aren't suggestions. They're hardwired survival mechanisms that have outlived empires, and when the warnings piled up, he treated them like noise irrelevant for someone who knew better. In the end, every red flag had been raised. Every caution had been voiced. But Mark didn't need more information. He needed to believe that love was stronger than nature. And nature never asked for his trust. It was supposed to be routine. Just another Saturday morning. Just another cleaning day. Mark Fisher had made a habit of deep cleaning Tiny's enclosure every other weekend. A process that involved removing the heavy-bodied snake, placing her temporarily in a secure bin, and carefully scrubbing the glass, changing the substrate, and wiping down the heating elements. But that morning, August 12th, Mark deviated from the script. According to time-stamped footage from a camera mounted above his living room, he opted to skip the bin. At 9:17 a.m., the video shows him reaching into the enclosure with both arms and lifting. Tiny, now measuring over 8 feet and weighing close to 80 pounds, directly onto his shoulders. The snake slithered across his neck and down his back in a slow, familiar rhythm. There was no sign of struggle, just calm, fluid motion. Mark disappeared off camera a few minutes later, heading toward the kitchen where he often let Tiny roam while he cleaned. That was the last time he was seen alive. What triggered the shift from calm to constriction? Experts can only theorize. Burmese pythons rely heavily on scent and thermal detection. It's possible that Mark, sweaty from moving furniture and unplugging heating pads, inadvertently mimicked prey conditions. A sudden movement, a warm patch of skin, a familiar rhythm, misinterpreted as vulnerability, it could have been any combination. In some cases, even the sound of a refrigerator compressor or a nearby pet can set off a feeding response in captive snakes. There is no audio on the footage, but what came next is hauntingly silent. Hours passed. Mark missed a virtual meeting at 11:00 a.m. unusual, but not alarming. By 1:30 p.m., concerned, A neighbor knocked on his front door. There was no answer. At 2:03 p.m., she used a spare key Mark had given her in case of emergency. What she found was a tableau of horror. Mark lying motionless on the kitchen floor, his face pale and eyes open, with Tiny loosely coiled beside him, not aggressive, not alert, just still. The python's body was partially draped over his torso, its head resting on the floor a few inches from his hand. There were no signs of thrashing or blood, just the eerie quiet of aftermath. She called 911 immediately. First responders noted light bruising around Mark's neck and upper chest, consistent with constriction. There were drag marks on the linoleum, as if he had attempted to move or crawl. The room was otherwise undisturbed, no broken glass, no overturned furniture, no signs of a fight. That's what makes python attacks so terrifying when they happen. They're almost silent. Once the coils are in place, there is no second chance. No shout, no scream, just a slow descent into unconsciousness. Mark had handled Tiny dozens, if not hundreds of times. To him, this moment had always been routine, familiar, safe. But snakes don't have routines. They have instincts. And on that day, for reasons we may never fully understand, Tiny stopped being a pet and reverted to something else entirely, something ancient, something lethal. The timeline of Mark Fisher's final moments can only be reconstructed through chilling fragments. A silent video, a scattered scene, and the cold precision of forensic analysis. At some point, after placing Tiny around his shoulders, the python's body shifted. Not suddenly, not violently, just a gradual tightening that would have felt, at first, like a familiar weight. But this time, the coils didn't stop adjusting. One loop around his neck, another across the chest, a third winding beneath the armpit. Constriction is not a chaotic thrashing, it's methodical. As pressure builds, every exhale becomes a trap, preventing the next breath from fully entering. Panic likely set in within seconds. Mark, still standing or perhaps already stumbling, tried to loosen the grip, his fingers scrabbling between his neck and the python's body. But the more he pulled, the tighter Tiny squeezed. That's how pythons are wired to respond to resistance by increasing force. Constriction doesn't only suffocate, it cuts off blood flow to the brain, leading to unconsciousness in under a minute. Forensic investigators later found a scene that told a desperate, silent story. A tipped-over cleaning bucket, a broken spray bottle, one rubber glove halfway across the room. The edge of the kitchen table bore fresh scratches marks that matched the span of human fingernails. A stool had been knocked sideways, its wooden legs splintered. Terrarium tools, long tweezers, a water dish, a log were scattered on the floor. But nothing was shattered. There had been no flailing, no last-minute flurry. Just a man being slowly pulled down by something he never expected to turn. The coroner's report was stark. Asphyxiation due to compression of the neck and thorax. No signs of bite marks, no pre-existing medical conditions. Tiny had not struck with her teeth she didn't need to. The python had simply tightened with calculated efficiency, responding not to emotion or malice, but to some unseen trigger, a thermal cue, a sudden shift in balance, a scent. And once the process began, it played out exactly as nature designed it. Muscles honed by millions of years of evolution compressed arteries and lungs in a symmetrical death grip. Mark likely lost consciousness within 30 to 45 seconds. Brain death would have followed within minutes. When paramedics arrived, the snake was no longer constricting. Its body lay slack, draped across Mark's torso with the loose, weighty stillness of a creature at rest. But that stillness belied what had come before. What makes this form of death so horrifying is its intimacy, the way it happens, skin to scale, breath to breath. There is no distance, no separation, no barrier. Just a man alone with something he thought he understood. Experts later stated that Mark's death was not a result of aggression, but biology, a perfect alignment of vulnerability, instinct, and opportunity. He had trusted her, and in trusting her, let his guard down completely, and when nature moved, it did not hesitate, it did not pause, it simply squeezed. In the immediate aftermath of Mark Fisher's death, confusion gripped both investigators and the exotic animal community. While the scene clearly pointed toward asphyxiation, some officials were hesitant to accept that a man could be killed by his own pet python without a single bite mark or scream for help. Initial speculation ranged from heart failure to seizure, even the possibility of substance use. But the toxicology report, released days later, ruled out alcohol, narcotics, or underlying health conditions. Mark was in good physical shape, with no known cardiac issues or neurological risks. The medical examiner's conclusion, compression asphyxia, consistent with large animal constriction, closed one chapter and opened another. What followed was a storm of controversy and quiet distancing. Online forums that once celebrated Mark's detailed posts and feeding videos now deleted his name from threads. Local reptile hobbyist groups issued short statements of condolence, followed by disclaimers. "This tragedy could have been avoided," one group posted. Responsible handling guidelines exist for a reason. Some even began advocating for stricter ownership rules, a rare stance in a community known for defending exotic pet rights. But amid the online debates and media coverage, one question grew louder. What happened to Tiny? The fate of the snake became a second layer of mystery, unfolding not in the coroner's report, but in whispers and conflicting accounts. Some sources claimed the animal was seized immediately by authorities, transferred to an undisclosed animal control facility, and later euthanized due to safety concerns. "An animal that's killed once will do it again," one unnamed official told a local paper. Yet others close to Mark insisted this wasn't true. A family friend, who had access to his property in the days following his death, claimed the snake was taken not by the city, but by a private handler, an experienced reptile keeper from out of state who had offered to take Tiny in quietly. "They didn't want her destroyed," the friend said. "Mark wouldn't have wanted that either." No formal record has been released to confirm either account. Animal control declined to comment, citing privacy laws and ongoing internal review. The absence of documentation only deepened the tension. Was the python, a known killer, living quietly in another terrarium under someone else's care? Or had it been destroyed without public notice, erased from the story like a ghost? The uncertainty kept the community divided. Some felt the animal deserved to live, since it acted on instinct, not aggression. Others argued that a second chance was a dangerous gamble. As the debate simmered, Mark's house was cleared out and eventually sold. His online presence disappeared. But Tiny, whether buried, burned, or behind glass in some remote facility, remained the most haunting question of all. The predator that had once rested peacefully in his arms had crossed an invisible line. And in doing so, it left behind more than just a body. It left a vacuum filled with silence, guilt, and speculation, a shadow that continues to flicker behind every retelling. In the weeks that followed Mark Fisher's death, a wave of expert commentary flooded the media, each voice attempting to bring clarity to the horror. The consensus among herpetologists was strikingly unified. This was not a case of animal aggression, but cold, unthinking instinct. "Pythons don't snap," said Dr. Helena Sorrell, a specialist in reptilian behavioral response. "They don't feel rage, jealousy, or betrayal. They respond to sensory input, movement, heat, scent. If that input mimics prey, the result is predictable." What happened to Mark was not the result of malice or betrayal. It was a perfect biological reaction. Burmese pythons are ambush predators by nature, evolved over millions of years to detect the faintest thermal signature and strike without hesitation. In captivity, their environments blur the lines between prey and handler. Mark's skin temperature, body movement, or even scent could have crossed that invisible threshold, triggering what's known as a feeding response. The snake's brain doesn't rationalize it, just acts. And once it begins to constrict, there's no halfway point. Pressure increases with every breath its victim exhales, locking the lungs tighter and tighter until consciousness fades. "If you can't stop the squeeze in 10 seconds, said Dr. Marcus Vell, author of Captive Giants, The Ethics of Large Snake Ownership, you can't save yourself. That's the window. After that, it's over. The fundamental problem, experts agree, is the human tendency to anthropomorphize animals, especially reptiles. While dogs and cats have been bred for thousands of years to bond with humans, snakes have not. They don't possess the neural structures for affection, loyalty, or trust. But many exotic pet owners, including Mark, fall into the trap of projecting those feelings onto their animals. He believed Tiny recognized him, trusted him, even loved him. That belief, reinforced by years of calm interactions, overrode every warning sign and every established safety protocol. Herpetological societies across the country began releasing educational materials in the wake of Mark's case, reiterating that snakes over 6 feet should never be handled alone. Statistics, while low in number, back up their concern. Since 1990, there have been over a dozen fatal constrictor attacks in private homes across the United States, often involving owners who believed they had a special bond. The profile is tragically familiar: experienced, devoted, confident, and alone. In every case, it wasn't a bite that killed, it was the embrace. What sets Mark's case apart is its visibility. He wasn't just a keeper, he was a documenter, a sharer, someone who proudly posted his relationship with Tiny online. That visibility made the tragedy public and forced uncomfortable questions into the spotlight. Could more education have saved him? Should private ownership of such animals be restricted? Or is the lesson deeper that no matter how much we learn, we can never rewrite biology? Mark Fisher didn't die because he didn't love his animal enough. He died because he believed love was enough. But nature doesn't return our affections. It only follows its code, a code that, once activated, cannot be paused, pleaded with, or undone. Mark Fisher didn't die because he was careless. He died because he believed in something that wasn't real. He believed love could override instinct, that trust could replace caution, that a creature designed by evolution to constrict and kill could somehow recognize him as different, not prey, not threat, but partner. And that belief, more than anything, sealed his fate. Mark wasn't cruel. He didn't neglect his animals or mistreat them. In fact, he was widely admired in reptile circles for the cleanliness of his enclosures, his attention to feeding schedules, his careful note-taking on molting cycles and temperature ranges. He loved Tiny. But in that love, he overlooked a fundamental truth. Nature is not sentimental. It doesn't make exceptions. It doesn't care if you raised it from birth or whispered its name like a secret. In the months after his death, reptile safety manuals began citing his case. His story, once an inspiring tale of human-animal connection, became a warning. New guidelines urged that all large constrictors be handled with a second person present, that handling sessions be timed, that emergency tools like snake hooks and alcohol spray be within reach. Even some states began to re-evaluate their private ownership laws, introducing mandatory permits and inspections for snakes over a certain length. In Mark's name, the rules changed, but too late for him. Among those who knew him, the mourning was complicated. Friends struggled to reconcile the man they admired, thoughtful, gentle, meticulous with the risk he took. Some blamed the community for encouraging a false sense of control. Others blamed the culture of online exotic pet influencers, where cuddling a deadly creature earns more likes than setting up a safe barrier. But none of it brings him back, and none of it changes the fact that in Mark's final minutes, he was alone. Alone with a predator that didn't hate him, didn't even fear him. It simply reacted. No betrayal. No warning. Just nature, doing what it was built to do. In the final scene, the camera pans slowly across the remnants of Mark's reptile room. The glass enclosures are empty now, their lights turned off. A faint reflection of red and blue emergency lights still lingers on the glass like a ghost frozen in time. The tools are packed away, the walls bare, the silence complete. He believed love could tame nature. But nature doesn't need love to kill. It only needs opportunity. On screen, a single line fades into view as the image darkens. Affection is a human word. Instinct is the animal's. That is the lesson left behind, not just for reptile owners, but for anyone who thinks devotion can rewrite biology. Mark Fisher's story is not just about a snake and a man. It's about the limits of connection, the cost of faith misplaced, and the thin line between companionship and catastrophe. It is a story that whispers through empty cages and cold glass. Remember the rules, or be consumed by the exception you thought you were.